Hi bubblers, in today's video I'm going to show you how to generate nice, complex and decent looking PDFs in Bubble using the free PDF Conjurer plugin. I tried many plugins and none of them were working as expected. They were cropping the text in the middle, or they were paid, or there were many different issues. I found that this plugin was the most efficient one, but it's really hard to grasp around. It took me a long time to understand how to achieve the results that I wanted to achieve. So I thought I would just share it, and yeah, hopefully you'll be able to get some similar results. So on today's example, I'm going to be generating an invoice. This is the current setup that I have on my app. I have a very nice invoice generator. I'm storing all of this data. I can have a lot of line items every time. I have descriptions, discounts. There are a lot of things everywhere. Also have some text fields and some images, so custom logo, and the users are also allowed to pick their own custom brand color. And from there, they have an option to preview the invoice. If they click on that button, they will go to the specific invoice preview page that you see right here. And this page has then the option to download the PDF directly. So if you hit the download button, you'll get this very nice fancy PDF. Let's test it out. Yes. So this is the PDF that we get at the end of the process. Of course, I'm going to show you how to customize it so it can look as closely as possible to what you're aiming to get. And yeah, let's just dive in. So just a quick recap of the system I'm using. I've got an invoice data type where I'm storing a lot of data about the invoices. Each invoice can be retrieved and also edited through this create invoice page. So users can add as many line items as they want. They can duplicate them, they can edit them, they can really customize everything, including the colors and the logo that will show up on the invoice. And every time something is changed, I'm saving it in my database. There we also have the preview invoice button that leads to the invoice preview page, which is basically just displaying all of the invoices data. And this is the page that we're going to work on today. So the first thing you'll have to do is to install the PDF Conjurer plugin. You can just type in PDF, and it's the first one that shows up. So install this one. And once it's installed, just make sure that you're running on the latest version. So here it's 4.0.1. But the first thing we need to do is to drag a PDF model element on the page and display it there. It doesn't matter where or how, or it just has to be there. Don't worry about hiding it or whatever, just leave it here. From there, we're going to be able to get started. When the button download PDF is clicked, then we're going to be working on the element actions related to the PDF model. And the first thing we have to do is to start a PDF model. Okay, so we're not going to change much about the initial settings, so we're going to keep it like it is. I'm working on an A4 page. I want it to be a portrait. I'm just going to add some custom margins, maybe 24, 24, and 24. By the way, Bubble just published an update with a new editor, and it's really a pain to use. Like, I'm struggling a lot in this video, so I'm really sorry for the little blubs. Hopefully it doesn't disturb you too much. Okay, so the PDF model is started. Now I'm going to show you how to add a few very simple elements so we can generate the most basic PDF possible. So at least you understand how to make it work with the basic workflows. So in order to do that, we're just going to display some plain text. For example, we have the reference number, the invoice number, things like that, and maybe just the image, like the logo. So I go into my workflow tab, and here we're going to get started. The first thing that we can do in order to have something that is custom is to define styles for the PDF model. So a style is basically a type of font that you're going to use everywhere. So it's really what we call styles in Bubble. But here you have to define them again. So it's a little bit of a pain, but whatever. Just name them however you're going to use them. So here I'm using title left, and this one is going to be aligned to the left. You can change the font size if it's bold or not bold, whatever, you got it. So I'm going to speed up that part, I'm going to set up a few different styles for my own use, because I already have different styles of text that I want to display. Alright, next up we're going to be adding our first image. So there's an action that is called insert an image on a PDF model, and we're going to select that, and we're going to add, here for me it's a dynamic image. You can also add a static one, but here I want to use the logo of that specific invoice. So I'm pulling the current page's invoices logo. And you can add, for example, some custom margins. So let's check that box first, and I'm going to add a little bit of space at the bottom, for example 20. And you also have the options to add them to the header or footer. For now, we're not going to do that in that tutorial. I'm going to show it at the end. For now, you then have to fix a set width or height in order to keep the exact aspect ratio. So here I'm fixing the width, and the height is going to be responsive. It's going to be resizing automatically. Okay, so image should be there. Now we're going to add some text elements. So in order to do that, you insert text on PDF model, and you can either write whatever you want to write, or of course pull it as a dynamic data if necessary. So here my title is going to be some static text. Here is going to be invoice number, and I'm styling it with the style that I created in the previous steps. So I called it title left, and I want to inherit those styling criteria. So here I'm using title left, and of course you can also add some custom margins. So I don't know, putting 12 here randomly, and of course checking the box to use custom margins. Right, you can repeat the process to show however much text you want to show on that PDF. So if it's simple text, it's going to be very easy. You just have to use the same process over and over, and of course use the styles that you want to use. So here I'm using dynamic data this time, so I'm pulling directly the invoice number of the current page's invoice. Again, the style, I want the body here, I don't want the title style, and I'm gonna use some custom margins. Alright, now we're gonna add the last step, which is conjuring the PDF model. Conjuring is basically gonna wrap up everything as a PDF file, and you're going to be able to save it and keep going with the PDF that you just created. So when you do Conjure, it should always be the last step after you built every little thing that you want to see on your PDF. So of course you can customize the title. Here I had a dynamic title, so it's named after the invoice number, and customize some parameters. So here I checked save to database. We're going to use that right after. So now if I click download the PDF, I should be able to see my nice new PDF. Let's check it out. Yay, it's here. I've got an image, I've got the text that I wanted to show, and it's the results that I was expecting. Alright, the next step is going to be about saving the PDF to your database. In order to do that, you need to make sure that the last step of conjuring has save to database that is set to yes. Now we're gonna create a new workflow, a new event, which is going to be inside Elements, and it's going to be called a PDF model finished uploading and is usable, is available. So you select that, and basically what it does is that every time you're finishing conjuring the PDF, you can trigger a lot of actions, including saving the PDF where you want it saved. If you're not using that workflow, it's not going to be saved anywhere. Of course, you have save to database on Bubble, but you're not going to be able to retrieve it by any means. So you need to use that workflow. So what I'm trying to do here is to save it to my invoice type, and I have a field that is a file field where I can save my invoice every time it's generated. So here, the thing I'm trying to change is the current page invoices, and the field I created in my database is called invoice PDF, and here I'm gonna save whatever was created by the PDF model. So you can just select this PDF model, save PDF, and that would be it. That will just allow you to retrieve your file every time you actually generate it. So I'm just going to show you directly on the page. It's going to be a little bit more trivial. to make sure that the file is generated and can be opened and is really saved as part of the invoice. So here I'm just adding a little button. Sorry, I like to style it properly. I like to have it like, yeah, well aligned. Let's call it view PDF, for example. And we're gonna add a link destination here, which is going to be the important part. So the link destination should be sending towards the URL of the PDF that was generated. So I'm going to go into current pages invoice, and I'm going to go inside invoice PDF URL. And I'm going to open it as a new tab. It's just easier. Alright, so just to make sure that it works, let's test it out. At first, I didn't have that part of the workflow wired. So technically, if I click on the button, there shouldn't be anything there. There's no PDF file attached. Even though I already generated it, there's not going to be anything. See is blank, nothing there. Now, I'm going to trigger the workflow again, but remember now I have the second workflow that should allow me to save the PDF again in my database. So of course PDF is there, it's opening, that's all good. This already worked before, but now if I check the PDF file attached to my data, now it's there, and now I have it saved for the long term. Alright, that was part 2. Okay, next part, I'm gonna add all the simple text items that I want to display on my invoice. I'm gonna speed up that part because the process is very easy. Once you got it once, you can just repeat it infinitely. Actually, we already created these 2 first steps when we displayed, for example, the invoice number on the PDF. So here I'm gonna add all the very basic text items that are invoice number, the dates, all the things that I want to display one by one. The only thing that I'm not going to be displaying as text is the address column, because I want them to face each other. So I want the from and the to of my invoice to be face to face. So here what I'm doing is I'm just copying and pasting the process many times, and I'm just going to be replacing the text whenever and wherever I need it. So here, for example, I'm not working on the reference number anymore, I'm working on the invoice number. Okay, so I'm just going to speed up the process, and I'm going to show you what it looks like at the end when all my steps are there. So I'm going to refresh it, hit download PDF, and let's see. Yeah, now I've got all the plain text that I needed on my PDF. So we can go into the more complex parts, which are going to be tables, footer, displaying all the repeating groups data, etc. So the first challenge is this column. I have 2 options. So either I display the text line by line, so for example the from, and then after the from, the to. But I really want them to face each other because otherwise my invoice is going to be split over several pages. And I decided to instead use a column structure where I would put the from side on the left column and the to side on the right one. It's actually a little bit more complex than it looks like because we're not working with repeating groups, and the way the PDF Conjurer is wired is that when you're using columns, you have to use repeating data. And here I don't have repeating data, I just have one set of address for an invoice. So I'm going to show you how to work around that. Okay, so we're going to work on creating table structure for non-repeating groups. In order to do that, you need to add a step in your PDF Conjuring workflow, which is going to be creating a table on the PDF model. I'm going to put it at the right place on my invoice, so for me it was right after the logo. Okay, so here I'm just styling my table with the body text style and the header text style, and here I'm not using any borders. And I'm just going to add my headers, which is for the first column is going to be from, and the second column is going to be to. Alright, for the data we're going to display, I cannot display the list of items one after the other, but I don't want to create a repeating table for every item, like the street number, the house number, the country, etc. So I'm going to do a very shady workaround that actually worked for me. Follow along, buckle up, because this one is hard to get around. Okay, so here I'm looking for invoices with the unique ID that matches my current invoice's unique ID. So it's gonna return only one invoice, but this workflow is gonna like that because it only works with lists. So you always have to have a list inside that input field. What I'm gonna do next is that I'm gonna use format content as text, and this is gonna help me put everything I want to display here the way I want to display it. So I can use rich text editor to display it nicely or decently at least, and I can just list all the data I want for that specific invoice. Okay, so I'm just speeding up the process to show you how it looks at the end. The next step is super important once you have all your data there, is to add a delimiter. So here I'm using a random list of characters, XXX in that case, that will help me split every list of addresses for every invoices properly. This is ridiculous, like the concept doesn't make much sense. So basically we're taking a single item, we're making it into a list by doing a search for. Even if there's going to be one item, Bubble is going to consider it that it's a list. And for each item, we're going to list all the addresses. So we're working only with one address every time, but they still need to know that it's a list and they need to split it. So just add the delimiter and hopefully you will get it at the second step. So once we have our delimiter, we're going to do a next step, which is going to be called split by. And then we're going to use the same delimiter and we're going to add it in there in order to break down this list into many items again to recreate a list. I'm sorry, this is very unclear, but hopefully just by seeing how it works is going to be enough. Let me show you. Now I'm downloading and yeah, here is what we have. Our address is split properly. However, as you can see, when my field is empty, for example, here I didn't have any extra for the address, I get an empty row. And this is going to be annoying. It's not that problematic, but I'm going to show you a quick workaround to avoid displaying empty lines or line breaks whenever some field is empty. So I also realized that I'm missing the header rows, so I'm missing the from and the to that should show before the address. So in order to fix that, we're gonna get back to our little workflow. And here in my create table, we're gonna check the box to create the header row. Otherwise, it's not gonna be displayed. I forgot about it. And now to avoid the empty rows, we're gonna add an extra step before the split by, which is going to be find and replace. And we're going to use a reject pattern that is going to allow us to extract the empty rows and the empty spaces and replace it by a line break. So just use the enter on your keyboard and use that, and then add the last step, which is split by, and we used XXX here. So this should just replace the empty rows by nothing. So we should not have any empty line breaks on our PDF. Let's check. Yep, empty row is gone. And now we're all happy and satisfied. Okay, next up, we're gonna copy and paste exactly our things into the to column, so the second column, and here I'm just gonna replace all the fields by the right one. So I'm now replacing the from address by the to address. I'm using exactly the same workflow, so it should just work like that. Let's try it out. Clicking on download. Yep. So now I also have both addresses. So the to one is actually completely full. So there's no empty row because there's also an extra field. And of course we fixed that before. So there's one last thing. I want to use different styles. I want to align everything on the to column on the right, and I want to use different styles for the header. And this is the moment I realized there was a problem. Because yeah, usually you should be able to use parsed BB code, switch it to yes, and then be able to use BB code to style everything. But of course it was not working anymore.
3 hours later.
So it turns out that actually the latest update from the PDF Conjurer plugin broke the functionality of BB code. So I went to the plugin page and reverted to an older version, which is called Description Update 3.9.1. Hopefully they fix that very soon and the latest version is going to work as well with BB code, but here for the sake of the tutorial, I just used the older version of the plugin. So I started parsing some BB code here. I used some bold tags. I also used some size tags to make it slightly bigger since I didn't have any control on the font size. And I also used some alignment tags to align everything to the right. I'm gonna just speed that up because I'm very slow at writing properly. So yeah, my last step was actually to use the rich text formatting that I got through the format as text thing and use that to align everything to the right for the whole address content. Let's test it out. Once again, download PDF. And yeah, I finally have the results I was expecting. The titles are a little bolder. Everything is aligned nicely. So we can move on to the next part. Alright, now we're gonna check how to create a repeating group table with line items on our PDFs. So we're gonna try to display all of the items that are in my invoice. There's 5 different columns in total, and yeah, a lot of data overall to display. So the first thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna create a table. So again, in Elements Actions, you can just start a table on the PDF model. Yeah, create table. From there, we're gonna activate the header, and I'm just assigning the styles that I defined in my very first steps. And yeah, just adjusting the layout with lines only here. Just adding a couple margins at the top and at the bottom. And all right, now we can go into it. So the first column for my header is actually going to be the description of the line item. So that's my header row. And then I'm going to look for all the items that I want to display. So in my case, I have a data type specifically that is called line items invoice that has a invoice ID, so I can retrieve which line items match which invoices. So I'm basically pulling the list of items that I want to show. So I'm just adjusting my own filters so that it works in my specific case scenario. Of course, your database is probably going to be different, but just make sure that you're pulling the data that you actually want to see. All right. From there, we're going to use a similar thing that we did in the other steps. Here, we're going to display each item's description, exactly like we should have. And we're going to keep going with the next columns. So for the invoice, I have 5 in total. So unit type, unit price, then it's going to be quantity, and then total price. And for each of those, I'm going to use the same lists of items that I'm looking for, but I'm just going to display a different item. So here I was displaying the description. At that stage, I'm going to display the unit type, unit price, quantity, and total price. You get it. Okay, once this is done, I'm just making sure that I'm activating the header as expected. So checking all the little boxes, and we're going to try it out. Let's see what our PDF looks like now. Yeah, okay, so at least we got some kind of a start of a table here. The description and the unit type are displayed, but here, I don't know why I don't have the unit price, the quantity, or the total price. So I did a little bit of research, and this is actually due to displaying numbers. They're not getting displayed as is if you're just trying to display each item's number. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a trick in order to fix that. Maybe the PDF Conjurer developing team fixes that in the meantime, but for now, here's how I found a fix. So we're using something similar that we did for the columns. I'm using format as text at the end. And here I'm using this number formatted at, and here I'm going to use currency. So I'm formatting the number as I expected through a format as text function. And as you remember, this actually breaks down our list. It's not a list anymore. So we gotta have to add a delimiter, and then we're going to reuse the same split by, and then use the same delimiter to split it into a list over again. Okay. So let's try and see if that worked out for the unit price column. Yeah, okay. Prices are displayed, so the hack kind of worked as expected, which means that we can reuse the same process for the other columns as well. Just adding a little bit of more of margin so we can see things clearly. And yeah, here, starting again, format as text, pulling this number, formatted as, picking currency in my specific, no, that was a number actually. Yeah, that was the unit. Adding a delimiter, and then splitting by this delimiter. Doing the same for the total price, format as text. All right, and then I'm just going to use a little bit of BB code for the formatting of my header. So here I'm just going to copy and paste what I used in the past just for alignment and bold titles, etc. So speeding this up, just trying to make it look nice, and let's check the final result. Yeah, okay. I've got all of my data. I've got some alignment issues and yeah, some problems with the formatting of the BB code, so I'm just going to fix that ASAP. And I'm going to use the rich text editor to make it look nice, align on the right, use some slightly different colors, lighter shade of gray. And I'm actually copying the same type of style setting for the description column, so this way I can format the text with the rich text editor, so this gives me a lot more freedom. This is just for styling purpose, so it doesn't change anything to the behavior of our table. All right, cleaning that up, and let's give it a check. Yep, looking good. I think we got our table ready. Everything is displayed properly. There is still some issues with the padding and margins. I didn't find a way to add more space, so if you find one, let me know. That would be nice. But now we're going to move on to my next table, which is discount and fees. And for me, it's exactly the same because here I only have one discount, but I could have a limited number of discounts. So I'm going to use exactly the same workflow and the same behavior that I used to create the line items table, except this time I'm going to display the discounts. So the only difference that we're going to have here at the end is going to be restricting the width so that it doesn't take as much width as the rest of the tables and the rest of the elements on my page. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing I'm doing is basically copying the workflow. I renamed it so I know, okay, this is the discounts and fees tables. Cleaning all of my BB code as well. And also making sure I'm pulling the right data because I'm showing a different type of items. So I'm gonna speed that up because it's exactly the same thing that I did for the other table, and I'm gonna meet you at the point where I'm gonna work on the width of the item, of the table. Okay, so before checking out the margins, first I'm checking if my items are displayed properly, and yeah, here my discount and fees are on my invoice, so that's good. So the first thing I'm doing is actually adding some margins. Here I'm adding 400 on the left side. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, okay. It's way too much, so everything is squeezed in. So I'm gonna play again with the margins, and this time I'm gonna use 200. And yeah, you're gonna have to do a bunch of trials to see what type of margin works for what you're trying to display. Let's check it out one last time. Yeah, okay, I think overall it's looking quite good. All right, now I'm just taking a few minutes to adjust the table layouts because I still want some horizontal lines to divide my items here and there. So at least want to kind of break things down with the discount and fees. So here I just switched the table style, reviewing. Yeah, okay. We're getting there, we're getting there. So the invoice is starting to look like a real invoice, which is nice and satisfying. So now we're going to work on adding single row tables with 2 columns. So what I mean by that is that we're going to work on these 3 lines, which is total, subtotal, tax, subtotal, tax, and total. So every time I just have 1 item per row to show, right? I mean, 2 columns, 1 row. So it's going to be very similar to what we did for the header, because there's not that much data to display. It's not like a repeating group. So we're going to have to trick the plugin and use the format as text option like we did before. So here I'm creating a new table. I actually duplicated the one that I had for the header, so I have less work. I just need to clean things up. All right, so I got my subtotal table here, and I removed the lines. I'm going to remove the header because I'm just going to use what's actually in the content of the row. And here, just cleaning everything that was left from my header, and instead I'm going to display just static text subtotal, and I'm still using the delimiter and I'm still using split by, so that doesn't change. But then for my second column, I need to clean everything again, but here I'm going to pull the dynamic data for the subtotal. So here I'm using the current pages invoice, and I'm storing the data as the subtotal. Okay. Here I'm also going to use the format as number like we did for the past table, so I can format it as a currency and it's going to look all nice on my table. And of course we're still using the delimiter, and you can use the rich text to align it the way you want it to be aligned, change the colors, the size, etc. Everything that you're going to need. So let's test it out just for the subtotal. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, so the line is there, but now I want it to be aligned with my discount and fees, right? I squeezed the things in a smaller smaller width. So here I want to do the same thing, and therefore I'm just going to add the same margin that I used for the other table, which was 200 on the left side. So hopefully this is going to, squeeze the whole width overall and making it look nice. So once I've got the first table created, I'm just going to repeat the process for my tax total and then the overall total. So it's exactly the same thing, except that every time I'm just going to display different data in my table. So changing the text here. Yeah, let's say I'm adding the VAT, for example, and here I'm going to display the tax total. All right, second table is ready. Just copying that and pasting it. And now I'm creating my third one with the overall total for the invoice. Again, replacing the text. And then replacing the number that I was actually pulling through. Okay, let's check it. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, everything looks nice. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. So of course there's some font adjustments that can be made, but at least all the data that I want to be displayed is displayed. So it's already a very nice step. Okay, the next step is going to be creating the footer, which is going to sum up the company information, contact details, payment details. So we're going to create a column into that footer. There might be some easier ways to do that. This is a little disclaimer. I'm using the more complex way because it allows a lot of customization, because then you have rich text, so you can align things differently, use different colors, etc. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Before doing that, actually, I'm just doing a little bit of adjustments with the margins and the overall layout of my PDF. I also want to display some header lines and some other lines between the items. So just taking a few seconds to do that now. So I'm all ready to start with the footer. Okay, so for the footer, there's a very important step that you need to add to your workflow, which is activating the footer in the PDF model. So you need to activate it. It doesn't matter where in the workflow, as long as it's before Conjuring and before adding an element into the footer. So you can put it all the way at the beginning or just right before the moment you want to add stuff into your footer. On this action, there's not much to do. Just drop it there. You don't need to configure anything. The moment it's activated, it's good. And then you can start adding some stuff in there. So once it's activated, on my side, I want to add a table inside, and my table is going to be actually, again, very similar to what I had for my addresses. I'm just going to pull static information in there, and I want to use it in 2 columns. So I'm going to use here, create footer table, and I'm going to add that step right before Conjuring. Of course, one very important step is to check that box, put the element into the footer, the one that I just checked all the way at the bottom. If you don't check it, it's not going to be displayed in the footer. Okay, next up, I'm going to add my margins, and I'm going to restyle a little bit the headers that I want to have. So, of course, I'm going to have 3 columns in total. So one is going to be company details, the other one is going to be contact details, and the last one is going to be payment details. Of course, you might want as many as necessary, and of course, don't forget that every time you want to add another column, you need to check the box use 3rd, 4th, whatever, 5th column. If you forget to check it, the column is just not going to show up there. So here I'm just copying the expression because I'm lazy and I don't want to start writing it all over again. So I got my 3 columns. Here I'm cleaning everything, removing what was left over, and here I'm making sure I'm pulling the right data. For me, it was the company info on that column. On the second one, I'm going to display the contact details. So I'm storing all these things in my database for the invoices, so that's pretty easy to move forward with. There we go. Here again, cleaning, and that's my last step where my last column where I'm gonna add the payment details. So I've got 3 fields in total: bank name, IBAN, and BIC. So every time I'm just displaying the list of things. So the same way, since I'm copying the workflows, it's a bit easier, but of course we need to use the delimiters and then the split by. So here they're already there because I just copied and pasted directly from the header, but make sure that you have those because otherwise it's not going to take it as a list and it's not going to be displayed. Okay, so I've got all of my elements in there and we should be ready to give it a little try. And it's terrible. The footer information is not being displayed, as you can see here. I just have my header, but it seems like the rest of the content is missing. So I did a little bit of investigation, and I know where this is coming from is because I don't have enough margin at the bottom of my overall PDF, so it's kind of cutting the data that I want to display here. So first, I'm just going to add a little bit of margin on my footer itself, so it's going to match the rest of my page layout. But then the most important part is on my step 1, actually, starting the PDF model. I'm going to have to set the custom margins. It's super important. I forgot to do that. And here for my bottom, I need to add enough height so that it's going to be able to display my footer fully on every page. So here I'm checking my last section on my actual page, and it's around 100 pixels. So I might just add a little bit more than that just to be safe and making sure that I'm not cutting the contents by any ways. So here I'm adding 124 as a margin. And we're going to check that out now. Crossing fingers. Yes. Okay, we finally have a nice footer, and it's on every page of my PDF, which is great. So the overall structure of the PDF is finished. We got everything there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of adjustments for the design and the layout in general. I'm going to try to squeeze things in. So of course, adjusting a little bit the fonts and the sizes, etc. But then there's going to be a part to also add customizations like shapes, colors, lines. So part 8, resizing content. I'm just going to speed that up because I'm basically resizing all of my styles and fonts, making it smaller, reducing the margins. I want to show as much information as possible on the first page of the invoice. It's always better when it all fits into one page. So yeah, that's the result I got at the end. Also adjusting a little bit the sizes of the header rows. Let me show you the results. Yep. Okay, so that's my invoice after resizing everything. It's not looking bad. It's lacking a little bit of colors and maybe a divider after the total. And that's going to be our last part. I'm going to show you how to add custom shapes, lines, and colors on your PDF. Little disclaimer, this is not the most efficient way to do that. If you want to store some custom items and dynamic images, just store them in your database and then use the insert image workflow that we have with the PDF model. Here, I'm really using a dynamic way that allows me to create the images and the shapes directly on the page and therefore pull them in my invoice without having to store them every time in my database. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is to download and install a new plugin, which is going to be called Screenshot Group. So just type in screenshots and it's probably going to pop up here. Yeah, it's called Screenshot the Group. It's a free plugin, of course, because I'm cheap. And just install that and try to make it work with it. So on your page that where you're going to have the PDF workflow, you're going to have to drag and drop an element which is going to be called screenshots. Yeah, this one. So you can just pull it there directly and it's just going to be called screenshot A. Maybe I'm going to rename it. Yeah, screenshot color group for me. And then we're going to create the shape that we're going to try to screenshot every time. So here I'm just dragging a shape on my page. So you can hide it as long as you want, or make sure that you have other groups on top so it doesn't show for your users if it doesn't have to be on that page physically, but it needs to be present in order to capture it and add it on the invoice. So here I have a dynamic color, which I just did here, where my users can pick it when they create their invoices so they can change it as much as they like. So it's the shape that we have right on top here. And yeah, completely customizable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an ID attribute to that element. Make sure that you have in your settings the little box, I think it's a checkbox that allows you to add ID attributes to your elements. Make sure that it's checked in your project settings, otherwise it's not going to work. So yeah, I added an ID, just whatever random ID works for you. And here I'm doing a new thing in my workflow, which is going to be export image screenshots. And I'm going to add the element ID that I'm using here. And file name doesn't really matter because I'm not going to save it. So just adding it here, and I'm going to put it all the way at the beginning of my workflows. Actually, even before I start the PDF model. Okay, at this stage, I realized I didn't add the right ID for my attribute, so I'm just copying it and pasting it. Yeah, okay, now it should work. File name doesn't matter once again, but yeah, whatever. Okay, so the next step in your workflow is going to be to add an insert image, and basically what we're going to do is that we're going to insert the image that we just captured into our PDF. So here we're using a dynamic image, and we're going to use the screenshots color group, and then we're going to use the current file URL. So we're just using the file that we just created. And for the width here, you can really customize it and it's going to stretch the way you want it to be. I'm putting this at the right step in my model. So here I want to add it, for example, as a horizontal line before my total. So I'm just putting it here. And there's one last important step that we need to add, is that we need to add a pause in our workflow to make sure that we have enough time to capture the image before we try to pull it in a PDF model. Because the PDF workflow is quite fast overall, but the capture and screenshotting workflow is very slow. So I'm just adding a pause of a couple of seconds. I think I started with 1000 here, but actually 2000 to 3000 makes more sense in the workflow itself. So I'm going to show you right now. It's going to slow down your workflow as well, so you need to find a good balance. So let's check now. I'm clicking on downloads, checking my PDF. And now my image is not there. So gotta debug that. Let me check out. Maybe something was wrong in my workflow. Reviewing. Yeah. I forgot to add the right URL. So actually the URL that is being pulled, you need to put again, like the screenshot group's URL. And then you need to add a little bit of HTTPS in front of the URL. Otherwise it's not gonna work. So let's try that out again. Downloading the PDF. Let's check what happens. Yeah, okay, it's not ideal, but I've got my custom shape and custom color in there. See, we obviously have some margin issues and yes, some width issues, because indeed I forgot to add my little margins on the left, so it's aligned with the rest. So I was using 200, let me add that here. And yeah, might as well add a little bit of a top margin and some bottom margin. Let's try. Okay, see this little bug? Actually, my PDF did get generated, but somehow it got stuck in the pipeline. So that's where I'm changing my pause to 3000 seconds. And we're going to try that again. See if it works better now. So downloading, waiting the 3 seconds, and my PDF is there. Good. Yay! Okay, I got my custom line, custom colors, everything is pulled out nicely. So of course you can change the width, the height of the image that you're inserting, so it kind of suits you and works along what you're trying to create. And of course, thanks to the screenshot group thing, you can kind of screenshot everything. So you can screenshot circles, complex images, like overlays, whatever works for you. You can really screenshot it and pull it into your PDF dynamically. So it's pretty nice. Here I'm adding another image just to show you how it would work on the header. So since I didn't have any header on my PDF, of course I need to activate it before it, otherwise it's not going to work. So I'm adding the step right after I start a PDF model of activating the header. And then I'm inserting the image and I'm just playing a little bit with the width and the height, seeing what it looks like. All right, let's check it. Gonna try to generate our PDF now. Okay, so I've got my elements here. It's not perfect, but it looks like it's working. I'm just gonna adjust the width and the overall layout. By the way, Bubble's new editor is lagging so much, it's terrible. I hope I'm not the only one having those frustrations. Yeah, let's change the top. And actually, I forgot to check the little element is being put in the header. So yeah, you need to check it if you want it to have it on every single page of the PDF you're creating. So here I'm adding more width, so it should stretch out on the whole page. Let's give it one last try. Of course, now my workflow takes 3 extra seconds because of the pause. So you gotta find the right balance for you, make sure that it works nicely. And yeah, at least we've got a very nice looking PDF. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's much better than the other options that I found. fully customizable, so I think that's the best part about it. Let's just do a little final test, make sure that it works with my workflow and with different customizations. So like I was saying, my PDFs or invoices are completely customizable, so people can add many items. So here I only had one discount, but they could be up to, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever, it's unlimited. So I need to make sure that it works as a list, as a table properly. I can add more item, just see, make sure that it's not breaking in the middle. So yeah, doing a little test around here. Okay, let's preview. Got a lot of information on that page now, and when I download it, a little bit slow, but we're getting there. And yeah, now I have all of my discounts and fees. If I had more time, I would probably add more lines and make them thinner and yeah, make everything look a little bit nicer, but I think overall we're getting there. And yeah, it was quite a long and hefty process, so I hope that you make it through. I hope you enjoyed the process. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks!